Michael Ashworth wasn't your typical 8-year-old. While other kids his age were playing video games, this boy was solving doctoral-level calculus problems. He lived in Beverly Hills with his father, Donovan Ashworth, the billionaire CEO of Ashworth Technologies. Just weeks before, Michael had made history as the youngest person ever inducted into the Mathematics Hall of Fame. As Michael settled into seat 1A on Flight 447, he pulled out his tablet. His fingers moved quickly across complex equations that would stump most university professors. He was quiet, focused, completely absorbed in the world of numbers. He had no idea that his love for mathematics would soon become the only thing keeping him sane. Belle Coynton sat several rows back, her world falling apart. At 45, this marketing manager at Ashworth Technologies had just been demoted after disastrous quarterly results. She was desperate, flying to Boston for a conference that might save her career. But Belle carried more than just professional baggage. She had 2 phones with her that day, her work phone and an untraceable burner phone she kept for emergencies. Deep down, Belle harbored racist beliefs about what she called the natural social order. When she saw Michael sitting confidently in first class, every prejudice she'd ever held bubbled to the surface. Other passengers settled in around them. Temperance Rodriguez, the progressive flight attendant, moved through the cabin checking on everyone. Marcus Stone sat quietly in 3C, looking like just another businessman, but actually serving as an undercover federal air marshal. Crawford Chen, an elderly businessman, made quick judgments based on appearances alone. Belle walked directly to Michael's seat and stood over him like a predator. Her voice cut through the cabin's peaceful atmosphere. "Excuse me, but you're sitting in my seat. Move to the back. Ik where you belong." Michael looked up from his math problems, confused but polite. He showed her his boarding pass with a shy smile. "Ma'am, this is my assigned seat. See? 1A. Belle wasn't interested in facts. Her voice grew louder, more aggressive. "I don't care what that fake paper says. Children like you don't fly first class. I'm a business executive. I deserve this seat more than some random kid." Temperance quickly stepped in, her voice professional but firm. "Ma'am, I can confirm this young man's reservation is completely legitimate. He's properly ticketed for seat 1A. But Belle was just getting started. What came next were vicious racial attacks full of pure hatred. "Check his credit card. Check his ID. There's no way his family can afford this. It's probably stolen." Michael's eyes began to fill with tears. He didn't understand what he'd done wrong. The confusion and hurt were written all over his young face. Other passengers began murmuring agreement. Crawford Chen looked at Michael with growing suspicion. "The lady has a point. Seems very unusual for a child to be alone in first class without proper supervision." The entire cabin was turning against this brilliant child. Belle sensed the support and pounced on it. "Exactly. Something is very wrong here. I demand you move him immediately." This wasn't about a seat anymore. This was about Belle's twisted belief that successful black people threatened the way things should be. Michael sat there working on problems that would challenge PhD students, tears quietly rolling down his cheeks, wondering what he had done wrong. He had no idea that Belle was actually an employee of his father's company. Belle excused herself to the bathroom, pulling out her untraceable burner phone. Inside that cramped airplane bathroom, the most evil plan imaginable began forming in her mind. She was about to frame an 8-year-old, a child. When she returned, Belle put on the performance of her life. As Michael organized his math worksheets, she pretended to stumble near his seat. "Oh, so sorry, sweetie," she said with fake sweetness. During that fake stumble, Belle slipped her burner phone deep into Michael's backpack. The innocent boy never noticed. He was too focused on a particularly challenging calculus problem. Belle began building her false narrative, chatting with nearby passengers in a concerned voice. "I just feel so bad for that little boy. Where are his parents? This seems like neglect to me." She was poisoning their minds against Michael before making her accusation. 10 minutes passed. Michael continued working on his math problems, completely unaware he was about to become the victim of a disgusting crime. Then Belle began her Oscar-worthy performance. She frantically searched her purse and seat area, My phone! Oh God, my phone is missing!" she cried, loud enough for half the first-class cabin to hear. "It has all my work contacts. My whole life is on that phone." Other passengers looked up concerned, but it was all an elaborate act. Belle's voice grew more panicked, more desperate. "I had it right here when I sat down. The only person who's been near my area is that boy." And then she did it. She pointed directly at 8-year-old Michael and said the words that would destroy his world. He must have taken it. Michael looked up from his calculus problems, completely confused. "Ma'am, I haven't touched anything of yours. I've been working on calculus problems this whole time." But Belle had already planted seeds of doubt. Even Temperance Rodriguez looked concerned. "Michael, honey, could you please check your backpack?" With tears forming in his eyes, Michael opened his backpack. Belle's planted evidence tumbled out. Her burner phone fell onto the airplane floor with a loud thud. Belle erupted in fake outrage. "There it is! He stole my phone! I knew it! Thief!" The passenger outrage was immediate and devastating. "I can't believe this. He seemed so innocent. This is exactly what I expected. Call the police right now." Michael's world collapsed in that moment. This brilliant little boy broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. "I didn't take it. I promise. I don't know how it got there. I would never steal anything." But no one believed him. The chaos in first class reached a fever pitch. Passengers shouted over each other, creating a cacophony of hatred. "Get him off this plane! I can't believe they let people like this in first class." Flight attendants desperately tried to restore order. In the middle of this storm sat little Michael, tears streaming down his face, completely overwhelmed by the tsunami of hatred. This mathematical prodigy was now being treated like the most dangerous criminal in America. Captain Morrison's voice cut through the intercom, firmly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an emergency landing in Denver due to a serious security incident aboard the aircraft. An emergency landing for an 8-year-old child who had done absolutely nothing wrong." As the plane descended toward Denver, the cabin took on a carnival-like atmosphere. Passengers excitedly discussed what they had witnessed, congratulating themselves on catching a young thief. Belle sat like a queen on her throne, basking in what she believed was her moment of triumph. She had no idea what was coming. Within minutes of landing, the aircraft was surrounded by emergency vehicles, police cars, ambulances, fire trucks. The full emergency response protocol had been activated. Detective Rivera and Officer Thompson boarded with serious expressions, treating this like a high-stakes criminal situation. Belle immediately launched into the performance of her lifetime. "Officers, that boy stole my phone. Everyone saw it fall out of his bag. I caught him red-handed." Other passengers nodded vigorously in agreement. Despite Michael's age, the police made the decision to place him in restraints. Handcuffs, specifically designed for children, were placed on the tiny wrists of a mathematical genius whose only crime was being black in first class. "You're under arrest for theft," Officer Thompson said in a cold, official voice. The Miranda rights were being read to an 8-year-old. Michael wasn't silent. He was hyperventilating through his tears. Voice trembling. "I want my daddy. Please call my daddy. I didn't do anything wrong." Officer Thompson had a brief moment of human decency and agreed to make the phone call Michael begged for. With shaking hands, Michael gave his father's number. "Sir, this is Denver Police Department. We have your son Michael in custody. He's been arrested for theft on Flight 447. But there was something different about this call. Officer Thompson's voice changed during the conversation. His eyebrows furrowed, his posture straightened. He asked for confirmation of information that seemed to surprise him. What followed were 20 minutes of pure, concentrated agony for Michael. The plane sat motionless on the Denver tarmac like a prison. Even in handcuffs and sobbing, Michael continued looking at his math worksheets because they were the only thing keeping him anchored to reality. Belle was having the absolute time of her life, walking around like a conquering hero. This is what happens when parents don't teach children right from wrong. I've seen this pattern before. They start stealing young and just get worse. But during those 20 minutes, something extraordinary was happening behind the scenes. Phone calls were being made, not just any phone calls, but the kind that move mountains. Corporate security teams were being activated. Legal departments were being mobilized. Private jets were being fueled. The sound started as a distant rumble, then grew louder. 3 black SUVs with heavily tinted windows were racing across the Dietz, over tarmac at incredible speeds. These weren't ordinary vehicles. They were bulletproof, government-grade SUVs that only the most powerful people travel in. Stepping out of the lead vehicle was a man who radiated power, wealth, and barely contained fury. Donovan Ashworth stood 6'2", impeccably dressed in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. Behind him emerged corporate security personnel and lawyers carrying briefcases filled with legal firepower. When Donovan Ashworth stepped onto that airplane, the very air seemed to change. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. His voice cut through the cabin like ice-cold steel. "Officers, I'm Donovan Ashworth. That's my son you have in handcuffs." Belle heard that name, and her world began to crumble in real time. You could literally watch the color drain from her face as recognition dawned. "Wait, Mr. Ashworth? Oh my God, you're—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The magnitude of what she had done was hitting her like a freight train. The little boy she had tormented wasn't just any child. He was the son of her boss. Not just her supervisor, but the CEO, the owner, the man who could destroy her life with a single word. Crawford Chen gasped audibly. "That's the CEO of Ashworth Technologies. That's a billionaire." The reaction throughout the cabin was immediate and devastating. Passengers who had been so confident suddenly looked like they wanted to disappear into their seats. But the bombshells were just getting started. The quiet passenger in seat 3C, Marcus Stone, suddenly stood up and reached into his jacket. "Agent Marcus Stone, Federal Air Marshal. I've been observing this entire flight, and I need to inform everyone that I witnessed a serious federal crime." The cabin fell into absolute silence. Agent Stone looked directly at Belle, his voice professional and deadly serious. "Ma'am, I have video of evidence of you planting that phone in this child's backpack." Belle's face went from white to green. Her legs seemed to buckle under her. Agent Stone pulled out his phone, showing crystal-clear footage of Belle's accidental stumble. "Here's footage of you deliberately placing your burner phone in his bag during your fake stumble. I have the entire incident documented from multiple angles." Belle's world was in complete freefall, but she wasn't going down without a fight. "That's impossible. He stole my phone. Everyone saw it. You're all conspirators." But Agent Stone wasn't finished. "Furthermore, this phone shows it was factory reset 3 days ago. No contacts, no personal data, no usage history. It's a throwaway phone you purchased specifically for this purpose." The technical evidence was devastating and undeniable. Belle had been caught red-handed by someone whose testimony could convict criminals in federal court, but Donovan Ashworth wasn't content to let the federal agent do all the talking. "Let me make sure everyone understands exactly what happened here," his voice boomed with authority. "My son Michael is a certified mathematics genius. He's the youngest person ever inducted into the Mathematics Hall of Fame. He was traveling to Boston to receive that honor. This brilliant, innocent child was on his way to make history. Instead, he's been traumatized, humiliated, and criminally framed by adults who judged him based on nothing but the color of his skin." The words hit the cabin like physical blows. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unable to meet his gaze. "This woman, Belle Coington, works for my company. She racially profiled my son, then deliberately framed him for theft to cover her prejudice. She used a burner phone to manufacture evidence against a child. She turned an entire airplane into accomplices to her racist persecution." Donovan turned to face Belle directly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Miss Coington, you are terminated immediately. Not just Red, terminated with cause, with no severance, no references, no possibility of future employment within any company in our network. Our legal department will pursue criminal charges for child endangerment, filing false police reports, and fraud." The corporate nuclear option had been deployed, Belle's career, reputation, and entire future had been obliterated in seconds. But it wasn't just about her job. Donovan had the influence to make her unemployable anywhere in the business world. Passengers who had supported Belle now looked absolutely mortified. Crawford Chen looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Mr. Ashworth, I owe your son a sincere apology. I was completely wrong." Others stared at their shoes, desperate to avoid eye contact. The mob mentality had evaporated, replaced by shame and regret. The most powerful moment came when the handcuffs were finally removed from Michael's tiny wrists. Donovan embraced his son with fierce protectiveness. "I'm so proud of how you handled yourself, son. You showed them who you really are." Michael, still emotional but finally safe, looked up with innocent eyes. With emotion. "I just wanted to solve my math problems and go to Boston. Daddy, I don't understand why she hurt me." Those words captured the innocence that had been attacked and the confusion that racism creates in young minds. The cabin fell silent, the weight of what they'd witnessed settling over everyone. Within hours, Belle found herself in real handcuffs. The charges were staggering: child endangerment, filing false police reports, fraud, conspiracy, and federal charges for interfering with air transportation. Legal experts predicted she would face 2 to 5 years in federal prison. Agent Stone's footage exploded across every social media platform. The headline was devastating. "Corporate executive frames 8-year-old math genius. Turns out he's our boss's son." The hashtag justice for Michael began trending worldwide within 6 hours. Major news networks picked up the story immediately. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, BBC. Every outlet ran wall-to-wall coverage of what they called the most shocking case of racial profiling ever caught on camera. Belle became the most hated person on the internet overnight. 3 days after the airplane incident, Michael walked onto the stage at the Mathematics Hall of Fame ceremony in Boston. The standing ovation was thunderous, lasting nearly 5 minutes. Every person was applauding not just his mathematical achievements, but his courage and dignity under fire. When Michael stepped up to the microphone, the auditorium fell silent. His voice was clear and strong, wise beyond his years. "Some people judge you before they know your heart, but math doesn't lie, and neither should people. I forgive those who hurt me because that's what makes us better." The simplicity and wisdom of those words from an 8-year-old left the audience speechless. Here was a boy who had every right to be angry, instead choosing forgiveness and hope. The standing ovation that followed lasted even longer, with many openly weeping at his maturity and grace. Inspired by his son's experience, Donovan announced a complete transformation of corporate policies at Ashworth Technologies. The most significant announcement was the creation of a $100 million scholarship fund specifically designed to support gifted minority children who might face similar prejudice. The Michael Ashworth Foundation would provide not just financial support, but mentorship, legal protection, and advocacy for brilliant young minds who faced discrimination. It would ensure that no child would ever have to endure what Michael had experienced alone. The ripple effects were extraordinary. Belle's actions had inadvertently sparked a nationwide conversation about bias in corporate America. Companies began implementing mandatory bias training programs. Airlines revised policies for handling passenger complaints involving children, especially unaccompanied minors. Educational institutions started programs to identify and protect gifted children from all backgrounds. The mathematics community rallied around young prodigies, creating support networks that hadn't existed before. What started as one woman's racist persecution had ultimately led to systemic changes protecting countless other children. The irony was perfect and profound. Belle's attempt to harm Michael had actually made the world a better place for gifted children of color everywhere. Her hatred had been transformed into hope, her cruelty into kindness, her destruction into creation. Today, Michael continues to excel in mathematics, working on problems that challenge the brightest minds in the field, but more importantly, he's become a symbol of resilience and forgiveness. His story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there's always the possibility for light to break through. Belle Coynton serves her sentence in federal prison, a cautionary tale of how prejudice destroys not just its victims, but those who harbor it. Her moment of hatred cost her everything she thought mattered: her career, her reputation, her freedom. But Michael's moment of grace created something beautiful and lasting. The foundation that bears his name has already helped hundreds of young mathematicians pursue their dreams without fear. His legacy isn't defined by what was done to him, but by what he chose to do in response. In the end, that's what real strength looks like. Not the ability to tear others down, but the wisdom to build something better from the pieces. Michael Ashworth didn't just survive his ordeal, he transformed it into triumph, proving that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths. And somewhere in Boston, in a quiet mathematics lab, an 8-year-old Jinyu continues working on problems that will change the world, because that's who he's always been, not defined by others' hatred, but by his own brilliant light that no amount of darkness could ever